had become unmanageable, there's two parts to this step. Admitting that we're powerless and saying that our lives have become unmanageable because of that powerlessness. Now, it's a very humble place to be in step one. I want us to turn to Judges chapter 16. We're going to talk about dangerous self-deception. You know, it's great that we found the Lord, He opened our eyes. And usually we come to the Lord at a point of our brokenness. And He comes and He opens our eyes and He saves us. And that's awesome. But that's not a guarantee that you're going to still make the right choices. And He's not going to stop you from making the wrong ones. And that's a scary place to be, because if you look at what he did for Samson, Samson was a Nazirite. He made vows with the Lord. See, one thing, the Bible tells us when you make vows with the Lord to keep them. And if you don't, you only hurt yourself in the process. And admitting that we're powerless is very humbling for people of the world, because we always bank ourselves on pride and our accomplishments and our achievements. And to say that we're powerless over our lives is really like hard to grasp unless you're broken. So this is a good step. But you have to really understand the danger of thinking that for some reason that you could do something in your own will and not have a consequence to it after you accept Jesus. Very dangerous place to be, because everybody thinks, well, I'm saved and I'm going to heaven. Yeah, but if you want to go back and live the way you want to live, God doesn't stop you. He didn't stop Samson. Samson made vows with the Lord and he broke them. And who got destroyed in the process of breaking the vows with God? Samson did. He lost his power. He lost all his abilities. But it was a slow process. There was a little compromise here and a little compromise there. And he thought, what's that? No, I don't think. I know, because it says it in the Bible. Because I know that it's not only fearful to, like even if somebody that really doesn't have the Lord, there's not as much fear in it as there is in somebody that does. Because once you know, and then you go back, dangerous things happen. And I was reading that, and I'm like, all right, let's read step one, dangerous self-deception. That's why we have to admit how powerless we are all the time, because as we progress in our recovery, we can start to get proud and thinking that like we're kind of like doing this. Or we're not really admitting that we're powerless. Look what it says. When we refuse to admit our powerlessness, we are only deceiving ourselves. The lies we tell ourselves and others are familiar. I can stop anytime I want. I'm in control. This one won't hurt anything. And all the while, we are inching closer to disaster. You can get on the fence with something after you get into recovery and thinking for some reason, and now that you're walking with the Lord, it's okay to do the things that, are dangerous. Samson was one of Israel's judges. Remember Samson? As a child, he had been dedicated to God, and God had gifted him with supernatural strength. But Samson had a lifelong weakness, the way he related to women. Wow. Wow. You want to come. Samson was especially blinded to the dangers he faced in his relationship with Delilah. His enemies were paying her to discover the secret of his strength. 3 times she begged Samson to tell her the secret. Each time she set him up and tried to hand him over to the enemy. 3 times Samson lied to her and was able to escape. But each time he got closer to telling her the truth. Finally, Samson revealed his secret, was taken captive, and died a slave in the enemy's hands. Samson's real problem can be found in the lies he told himself. By not admitting his powerlessness, he remained blind to the obvious danger that his pride and desire for beautiful foreign women were leading him into. This caused him to gradually inch his way towards an untimely death. We need to be careful not to fall into a similar trap. As we learn to acknowledge our powerlessness over our addictive compulsive tendencies daily, we will become more aware of behaviors that will likely lead us to destruction. So, why is it so important that we do this step process? Because it shows us the behaviors that were tied into our addiction. See, the addiction to whatever substance it was, or whatever it is that we fell into, was, all right, we take that away. Now we have to reveal the underlying cause and all the behaviors associated with it that can cause us to go what? Back into the addiction again. Where most people say, hey, I put down the drugs, everything's okay. Yeah? Who told you that lie? We are powerless. And I want us to understand how awesome it is to really be humble enough to say that. Go with me, hold your finger there, go with me to 2 Corinthians chapter 12. And we're going to read the account of Samson and the compromises he made.
1492.
Look at verse 8 of 2 Corinthians chapter 12. The Apostle Paul was getting tormented by something. He was saying a thorn in his flesh, whatever it was. In verse 8 he says, 3 different times I begged the Lord to take it away. Each time he said, my grace is all you need. My power works best in weakness. So what is he trying to say here? He's saying when he's admitting how powerless he is, the power of God can work. It cannot work when you become what? Self-sufficient and prideful again. So 3 times he prayed to take it away. But then he said, look, my grace is all you need. My power works best in weakness. So he shifted his perception now. He said, so now I'm glad to boast about my weaknesses. Now you go into the world, you boast about this and you boast about that, and look how good I am at work and my job, I'm good at this. Look how nice my house is, and look how nice all these things I achieved now. Paul made a shift of his thinking. He said, so I'm glad to boast about my weaknesses. Why? Because the power of God works through our weaknesses. We know how weak we are and how we can't, in other words, in my weakness that I can't conquer, I know that when I'm humbling myself to do that and the Lord helps, it gets conquered, it's the Lord that conquered it, not me. I admitted that I was powerless. John can't do it. Now look what it says. That's why I take pleasure in my weaknesses and in the insults, hardships, persecutions, and troubles that I suffer for Christ. So, for when I am weak, then I am strong. Victory lies in the admission of complete defeat with God. You know that, right? You're only going to be victorious when you know that you can't do it. And then you try to take control back again after we get into recovery, and we make a mess all over again. That's why we go back to this powerlessness again. Some other area of our life we thought we had control of, we don't. Can I get an amen for that? And the Lord revealed to me how dangerous it is, because we think that we're shielded by Jesus. Okay? And that's good. Heaven is our home guarantee, but we're not shielded from our choices. Samson did everything that he wasn't supposed to do. And guess what? God didn't say, no, I'm gonna keep you from doing that. No, he let him do it. So we have an opportunity. God calls us, we get saved, he does this, he wants to do something in us. He wants us to glorify him, but we can actually destroy that gift by going our own way again. That's pretty scary. God's not like a puppet master that says, oh, I'm going to keep you doing right all the time. No, he's going to give you the ability to do right, but you have to make the choice to do it. Amen? All right, let's read the account of Samson in chapter 16. One day, back to Judges. I'm going to stop along the way and talk about a few things that weren't talked about and what made him fall into that compromise. One day, Samson went to the Philistine town of Gaza and spent the night with a prostitute. Word soon spread that Samson was there, so the men of Gaza gathered together and waited all night at the town gates. They kept quiet during the night, saying to themselves, when the light of morning comes, we will kill him. But Samson stayed in bed only until midnight. Then he got up, took hold of the doors of the town gate, including the two posts, and lifted them up, bar and all. He put them on his shoulders and carried them away to the top of the hill across from Hebron. So he still had his power, okay? He made that compromise to sleep with a prostitute, but he still had his power, you see? That was a compromise he made. Slowly it started degrading. Look, let's keep going. Sometime later, Samson fell in love with a woman named Delilah, who lived in the valley of Sorek. The rulers of the Philistines went to her and said, entice Samson to tell you what makes him so strong and how he can be overpowered and tied up securely. Then each of us will give you 1,100 pieces of silver. So Delilah said to Samson, please tell me what makes you so strong and what it would take to tie you up securely. Samson replied, if I were tied up with 7 new bowstrings that have not yet been dried, I would become as weak as anyone else. So the Philistine rulers brought Delilah 7 new bowstrings, and she tied Samson up with them. She had hidden some men in one of the inner rooms of her house, and she cried out, Samson, the Philistines have come to capture you. But Samson snapped the bowstrings as a piece of string snaps when it's burned by a fire. So the secret of his strength was not discovered. Now, what was Samson doing all along when he was with her? He was in compromise. He was drinking alcohol. And he wasn't supposed to drink. The Nazirite vows. He wasn't supposed to be with foreign women. And he wasn't supposed to drink any alcohol at all. And he was doing what? Both. First he had the women, then he was starting to drink, okay? But he still had power. See it, look. Now look what it says. Afterward, Delilah said to him, you've been making fun of me and telling me lies. Now please tell me how you can be tied up securely. Samson replied, if I were tied up with brand new ropes and had never been used, I would become as weak as anyone else. So Delilah took new ropes and tied him up with them, and the men were hiding in the inner room as before. And again Delilah cried out to Samson, the Philistines have come to capture you. But again, Samson snapped the ropes from his arms as if they were thread. So he still had his power, obviously, right? But she was setting him up. He didn't even see the setup. And guess what? He knew, notice he was getting farther and farther from God. See, when we get farther and farther from God, we fall into compromise, and we don't see it coming. We really don't see it coming. He didn't see it coming. He depended on, all right, God, this is me. I got supernatural strength and all my power, and that's it, and I can do whatever I want. He thought it was him that had the strength. It was God giving it to him. Right. And look what it says. This is funny. All right. Then Delilah, verse 13, then Delilah said, you've been making fun of me and telling me lies. Now tell me how you can be tied up securely. Samson replied, if you were to weave the 7 braids of my hair into the fabric on your loom and tighten it with loom shuttle, I would become as weak as anyone else. So while he slept, now think about it. If somebody's grabbing your hair and weaving it while you're sleeping, you're not going to wake up? He had to be really intoxicated not to wake up.
That's for sure. He was passed out.
Well, while he slept, Delilah wove the 7 braids of his hair into the fabric. Then she tightened it with the loom shuttle. Again she cried out, Samson, the Philistines have come to capture you. But Samson woke up, pulled back the loom shuttle, and yanked his hair away from the loom and the fabric. Then Delilah pouted. How can you tell me I love you when you don't share your secrets with me? You made fun of me 3 times now, and you still haven't told me what makes you so strong. She tormented him with her nagging day after day until he was sick to death of it.
Guess that house doesn't have an attic.
I can relate to Samson. But I digress with that because, 17. Finally, Samson shared his secret with her because she kept getting in his ear. Please, tell me, right? Finally he said, oh, please, enough. My hair was never been cut. Here it is right here. See, he remembered that vow. Never to cut his hair. That was a Nazarene vow he made. Finally, Samson shared a secret with her. My hair was never been cut, he confessed, for I was dedicated to God as a Nazarite from birth. Oh, brought back to memory, right? But if my head was shaved, my strength would leave me and I would become as weak as anyone else. Finally told him the truth, right? Told her the truth. Delilah realized he had finally told her the truth. So he sent for the Philistine rulers. Come back one more time, she said, for he has finally told me his secret. So the Philistine rulers returned with the money in their hands. Delilah lulled Samson to sleep with his head in her lap. And then she called in a man to shave off his 7 locks of his hair. No, he didn't wake up. Why didn't he wake up? You know when you're drunk or wasted. You can't. You ain't no waking up.
Even if I was drunk, I think I'd wake up.
Look. Delilah lulled Samson to sleep with his head in her lap, and then she called in a man to shave off the 7 locks of his hair. And this way she began to bring him down, and his strength left him. Now let me just give you a little pointer in this whole. We never really get away with sin, okay? We think because we do something and get away with it, that God's just letting us do it and it's okay. No. God has just given us room to change and grow and repent. He gives us grace so we can turn from it. But sooner or later, the power of God leaves us too. The strength that was keep us from falling, because we keep what? Falling into compromise. A little bit here and a little bit there, and we get away with it. And nothing happens. So what do we do as human beings? We keep doing it. And we keep doing it. And God says, you know it's wrong. I put my spirit in you. You know you're not supposed to do that. Don't think that my grace is so you can keep doing it. Because sooner or later, this judgment comes. So important when we get into recovery to think that we can get away with something because we have Jesus. Yeah, thank God we have Jesus, right? But we have Jesus to what? Help us to not do that. And to give us the ability to stop. Listen, if you're in compromise right now, don't tell me what you're doing. I don't want to know. Whatever you're doing. That you can't stop doing. You are being controlled by something. If you're saying, well, it's not hurting anybody. No, not yet. Sin always will hurt somebody down the line. Okay? So, my grace is sufficient. My power works best in your weakness. We have to understand. It doesn't mean that, oh, I'm weak so I can just keep partying. I can just keep doing what I want. Keep falling into sexual temptation and all these things. And not have a consequence. Because I'm saved and Jesus loves me. Yeah, he does. He loves you enough to what?
He's chasing you.
To chasten you. And thinking, Christians really think that they can get, remember the Israelites, well, we're children of Abraham. We don't have to worry about the way we live. Or when we go to temple, it's what Christians do today. Oh, I don't have to care how I live because I can just go to church and worship God because I'm saved. It's the same thing. And just go live like the devil. And did Israel suffer for that? But they kept going to church. Deception. One thing God never takes away is our choices. And he gave Samson some awesome abilities and power, right? And Samson's choices were for his flesh, not for God's kingdom or God's glory. That's pretty scary, isn't it? Because some reason we think that we're like shielded from that. You know what? God holds us more accountable than he does the unbelievers. Huh?
I know.
Excuse me?
Gouged his eyes out.
So true.
God still fulfilled his plan through him.
Yeah.
Because God's going to carry out his will no matter what. But Samson suffered. They gouged his eyes out and they made mockery of him. Let's read it.
Oh.
Look. Because I want to say something here. Because as we read on, because it says, after all that happened, it said, then Samson prayed to the Lord. You notice he didn't talk to God through the whole process? Till he was what? Done and broken. Why do we wait till that point before we go to God? Very dangerous place as a believer. Samson was a believer. Look. This is beautiful. This is brutal what happens, right? Verse 20. Then she cried out, Samson, the Philistines have come to capture you. Then he woke up and he thought, I will do as before and shake myself free. See it? I will do as before and shake myself free. See, he wasn't asking God to get him through any of this, by the way. Samson thought his power, he was doing it in his power, by the way. But he didn't realize the Lord had left him. Why did he not realize that the Lord had left him? Because he was living in compromise, he was living a sinful life, he was doing the wrong thing, and he couldn't hear God anymore. He wasn't discerning of God anymore. That's where it takes you. See it? Look what it says. He didn't realize the Lord had left him. So he couldn't sense God anymore. What does our sin do? We lose that sense of direction and we get deceived by sin. Then you have to ask yourself, is this God's will? Or is this... And you start to question because you can't hear God anymore. So you're saying, is this God or is this me? I can't tell anymore. Look, so the Philistines captured him and gouged out his eyes. The first thing they do is gouge out your eyes so you can't see no more. Back then, they were barbaric. Ain't how crazy. They did some crazy stuff. They took him to Gaza, where he was bound with bronze chains and forced to grind grain in the prison. Now, God could have said, no, I'm going to save you from that. But those were the consequences of Samson's choices. And guess what? He was a believer. He still got his eyes gouged out, and he was still a slave. That's pretty fearful. Just because you go to church, don't think that you can't fall into this. Or read your Bible. But before long, his hair began to grow back. The Philistine rulers held a great festival offering sacrifices and praising their god, Dagon. That was another god, a false god. They said, our God has given us victory over our enemy Samson. When the people saw him, they praised their God, saying, our God has delivered our enemy to us. The one who killed so many of us is now in our power. Half drunk by now, the people demanded, bring out Samson so he can amuse us. They were mocking him. So he was brought from the prison to amuse them. Then they had him stand before the pillar supporting the roof. Samson said to the young servant, who was leading him by the hand, place my hands against the pillars that hold up the temple. I want to rest against them. Now the temple was completely filled with people. All the Philistine rulers were there, and there were about 3,000 men and women on the roof who were watching as Samson amused them. Then Samson prayed to the Lord, first time. In this whole account, did Samson pray to the Lord. Sovereign Lord, remember me again. This is his grace and mercy, okay? But, yeah, God used him again, right? But what did he do? He had no eyes. And he was, look, oh God, please strengthen me just one more time with one blow. Let me pay back the Philistines for the loss of my 2 eyes. Then Samson put his hands on the 2 center pillars that held up the temple. Pushing against them with both hands, he prayed, let me die with the Philistines. And the temple crashed down on the Philistine rulers and all the people. So he killed more people when he died than he had during his entire lifetime. Later, his brothers and other relatives went down to get his body. They took him back home and buried him between Zorah and Eshtaol, where his father Manoah was buried. Samson had judged Israel for 20 years. Samson judged Israel, but he never judged himself. That's why this room isn't full. Believers don't judge themselves. They judge others. Here we are sitting there judging ourselves, saying, you know what? I don't want this to happen to me. I don't want to be going to church, singing the songs, going out there, living a sinful life, and thinking that I'm going to be okay. King David did some crazy stuff, didn't he? He was saved and God fulfilled his plan, but his life was a mess from the mistakes he made here. And guess what, believer? Your life can be a mess from the mistakes you make here. Don't think that God just says, oh, I'm just going to stop you from doing all them bad things that you do. No. Obviously, you know that some of the things that you're still doing are killing you, and you're still doing them, and you believe in Jesus. Can I get an amen for that? So, admitting that nothing good lives in me in my sinful nature is the best thing you can say. That you're powerless. And for some reason, myself included, thinks that over a period of time that I can have some kind of power and control over my life again. Does anybody ever fall into that category? Very dangerous place to be. Because guess what we forget about? The power that delivered us. When I read this, I'm saying, you know, the Lord spoke to me because I read this account a lot, but I never really sunk in. Samson was given tremendous abilities by God, but God never stopped him from ruining his life by making bad choices. I'm like, wow. He would not judge himself, so he would not get judged. We're at a great advantage coming here because we can judge ourselves now and say, you know what? I'm power. I need to stop. Whatever's going on in your life, I don't know what it is. Everybody has something. And I need to stop before what? The consequences come. And they will come. And God is so graceful. He just gives us a rope and he wants us to turn by knowing his word than by the rod. By the eye, not the rod. So when you read the word and it's saying, no, this is wrong, and you get convicted by it, that's God telling you to stop before something worse is. Remember Jesus said, so stop sinning or something worse is going to happen to you?
Yeah.
I'm saved, I'm going to heaven. Yeah, that doesn't mean something worse ain't going to happen to you down here. Right. Playing church, the worst thing a believer can do. Because once our eyes are opened, you can't close them. So admitting that I'm powerless. I didn't realize how much powerless I really am over so many things. That's why I don't get so frazzled over a lot of stuff anymore. The stuff that I'm powerless